Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, Embracing Bimodal IT, Steps You Should Be Taking Today, brought to you by Information Week and Red Hat, and broadcast by United Business Media Limited. I'm Cynthia Harvey, contributing editor at Information Week, and I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. First, this webcast contains audience polling. The polling question will appear in the slide presentation window. Please complete the polls when they appear and click on the Submit Answer button located on the polling slide window. Thanks in advance for your participation. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during this webinar. Just type your question into the Q&A text area located to the right of the presentation window and then click the Submit button. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. You may also download a copy of the slides by clicking on the Additional Resources button located below the presentation window. If you are experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the help link below the presentation window. In addition, you can contact our technical support helpline, which is also located in the webinar help guide. Now onto the presentation, Embracing Bimodal IT, Steps You Should Be Taking Today. Discussing today's topic is Marty Wesley, a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Red Hat. He has worked in a variety of software product marketing and software product management roles for over 15 years in both large companies and startups. During that time, he has helped define and market infrastructure and business line applications based on open source software. His experience with commercial open source solutions dates back to the very beginning of Red Hat Enterprise Linux at Red Hat. Marty, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Good. So audience, we're going to start off right off the bat with a poll question for you. Our first question is, how familiar are you with the term bimodal IT? And you can see the responses up there. You can select very familiar, somewhat familiar, I've heard the term but do not know what it means, or I've never heard of bimodal IT. And then don't forget to click the Submit Answer button there in the middle. And we'll give everyone just a couple of seconds to make sure that they have a chance to respond. All right, it looks like we've got a good number of responses. I'm going to go ahead and push those out. So we had 5.7% of people said that they were very familiar, and 34.2% said they were somewhat familiar. And then we had quite a few. I'm a little bit surprised that we had so many say that they've heard the term but don't know what it means. And 22.8% said they'd never heard of bimodal IT. So I guess you're in the right spot for today, since that's what we're going to be discussing. The reason why we asked this question was we asked a similar question in a survey not too long ago. Back in August, UBM Tech did a survey that was sponsored by Red Hat. We talked to 247 IT decision makers at North American enterprises that had more than 5,000 employees. And we asked a whole lot of questions about bimodal IT. And the very first question we asked was the one that we just asked you. How familiar are you with the term bimodal IT? In that survey, what we found was that it was divided about 50-50. It was 53% of people were either very familiar or somewhat familiar with bimodal IT, and with 13% being in the very familiar category. Then it was a little less than half that either said they'd heard of the term but didn't know what it meant, or that they had never heard of bimodal IT. At that point in the survey, we gave everyone a definition. And the definition that we used was one that Gartner has written. It says, bimodal IT is the practice of managing two separate, coherent modes of IT delivery, one focused on stability and the other on agility. Mode 1 is traditional and sequential, emphasizing safety and accuracy. Mode 2 is exploratory and nonlinear, emphasizing agility and speed. So basically what we're talking about here is having two distinct groups within the overall IT operation. One group is going to be focused on kind of the traditional IT methodology and traditional infrastructure. They're going to be managing those client server systems. They're going to be handling those legacy enterprise applications. And then you have another group that they're going to be maybe focusing more on cloud computing and mobility. Maybe you have a development team that is more agile, or maybe you have a DevOps team. After we gave everyone that definition in the survey, the next question that we asked them was, do you or disagree with this statement? My organization is embracing bimodal IT. And again, it was about half and half. So probably the people who understood bimodal IT said that the organization was embracing it. In this case, we had 51% who either strongly agreed or agreed somewhat. Then 21% said they neither disagreed or agreed. And then we had smaller percentages that were disagreeing somewhat, strongly disagreeing, or they just weren't sure. Another question that we asked everyone was, in your opinion, what are the potential advantages of bimodal IT? And here we had a really clear winner. People could select more than one option, which is why it adds up to more than 100%. But the number one option selected by the most people was greater agility. That was 70% of the survey respondents said that. Then other popular answers were better alignment between IT and the business. That was selected by 51% of respondents. Greater efficiency got 45%. Reduced time to market for new products and services was selected by 44%. Cost reduction was selected by 41%. Improved capability for innovation was 41% also, and then improved productivity at 36%. So at this point, Marty, I'm going to bring you into the discussion here. It sounds like even in this group that we have on the call today, there's quite a few people who aren't really all that sure about what's involved in bimodal IT. And so I'm going to ask you, what should IT leaders be doing to educate themselves and their teams about bimodal IT?
Yeah, well, I think probably everyone is familiar, at least with Mode 1 applications. Those are the applications that these individuals are using to run their business, right? Those are the systems of record that they're currently forming the backbone of their company. And if they're not familiar with bimodal IT, they may just not be aware of the shift that's going on towards these Mode 2 applications and the advantages that you just highlighted, the agility and the alignment with the business. But the important thing, I think, in understanding that you have these kind of two modes of applications is really the importance of aligning the two modes so that you're not, pulling in two different directions, but that you're actually getting synergy from the two of them. And there have been a number of reports from analysts. You mentioned the Gartner definition that we used. Gartner has actually published how you can unify your infrastructure, across the bimodal IT, and there's a PDF available on Red Hat's website about that. Similarly, IDC has also talked about how they call it hybrid IT, about how that can be done. Also available on Red Hat's website if they're interested. And finally, Red Hat has actually published an ebook on the topic of bimodal IT and how it can be, inform your infrastructure strategy. So lots of good resources, certainly that that are available from Red Hat and a number of other providers, and that IDC and Gartner and other prevalent analysts have published as well.
So Marty, I want to follow up just a little bit. What's the danger if your two modes aren't well aligned? What could possibly happen there?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you really could get into a situation where you're not leveraging all of the information that's available inside your organization. You could end up reinventing, some of the existing infrastructure and architecture that you already have. I mentioned that Mode 1 applications a lot of times are the core of your business. It's a lot of where your customer data resides or your core systems of record. A lot of times the business just wants a more agile service that leverages that data. So if you can find a way to build synergy between those Mode 1 databases of record or data systems of record and the new, more agile systems, you're able to deliver that service faster, but you're building on top of that core infrastructure that you already have. And you just have to make sure that those two infrastructures interoperate, because otherwise you're really leaving behind those traditional systems. And those traditional systems then turn into legacy systems, which really start to draw down IT resources, and that becomes the kind of the death spiral that we all know about, where they start soaking up so many resources, you really can't do anything new.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Marty. I think at this point we're going to have another poll question for the audience. Our next question, audience, is do your current IT vendors support bimodal IT? And there are several options there. You can select yes, they all support bimodal IT. Yes, we have a few key vendors who support bimodal IT. No, we are still looking for vendors who support bimodal IT. Or I'm not sure. And just go ahead and make sure you click that submit answer button. And again, we'll give everyone just a few minutes to get their replies in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and push it out now. It looks like we have a clear winner in this poll. Most people are not sure if their current vendors support bimodal IT. That was 61.5%. Then in the second place we had, yes, we have a few key vendors who support bimodal IT. That was 20.5%. No, we are still looking for vendors who support bimodal IT was 15.3%. And yes, they all support bimodal IT was a very small percentage, just 2.5% there. I'm going to go back to that survey we did earlier this year, just real fast. Another one of the questions we asked there was we gave everyone a list of a whole bunch of technologies and methodologies. Some of them fit into Mode 1 and some of them fit into Mode 2. And we asked everyone to select the technologies and methodologies that their organizations are currently using. And what we found was that enterprises were using a mix of Mode 1 and Mode 2 technologies, but that really they're more concentrated on Mode 1. Those are the traditional IT. That's really what's dominating right now. And this slide that we have right here is a chart that shows the most popular from the Mode 1 side. Number one on the list is traditional client-server computing. 71% of the respondents said that was in place at their organization. I don't think that surprises anyone. Maybe it's only a surprise that it's not higher. But then other popular answers were traditional networking and storage at 60%, traditional email systems at 58%, legacy enterprise applications, 57%, relational database management systems, 52%, traditional virtualization at 51%, and then dropping down below a majority, we had other popular answers were distinct IT development and operations teams, mainframes, waterfall development, and SOA. And then we have a similar slide on the Mode 2 side. Here you can see the percentages are quite a bit lower, even for the most popular Mode 2 technologies. The number one technology on this side was web apps at 58%, mobile devices 56%, hybrid cloud 53%, agile or lean development methodologies at 45, mobile apps at 44, then dropping down into the 30s, public cloud and automation, and smaller percentages getting down around a quarter of the respondents said big data analytics and Hadoop, continuous integration, or DevOps. So Marty, I'm going to get back to that vendor question again and throw it back to you. It sounds like we have such a majority of people on the call who really don't know if their IT vendors support bimodal IT. So what should they be looking for? How can they tell, either with their current vendors or with new vendors that they're looking at? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, and I don't think that is too surprising, because a lot of the IT providers that focused in the Mode 1 area are they themselves are probably having a tough transition to the Mode 2 technologies. You can see the list of Mode 2 technologies there that people pulled out that they're using: web and mobile and agile development and public cloud. DevOps. Those are all really new technologies that are embraced by a lot of the younger vendors in the IT space, whereas some of the older, more traditional vendors, maybe are struggling to make that transition. So it's not surprising that they have this bifurcation kind of almost of in their vendor set. But I think the important thing to think about here is that besides looking for a vendor that can span across those two, you also might have to recognize that those Mode 1 traditional applications, they can't sit still. You may not be able to leave them on their existing platform as they are. You may have to modernize them to make them available to your Mode 2 applications. That may mean upgrading the hardware that they're running on, upgrading the platform that they're on, upgrading the operating system, the database, or other middleware layers in between to make them available to the Mode 2 applications. And then, of course, as you go about developing those Mode 2 applications, you want to pick providers that give you the broadest range of tools and systems and solutions that allow you to access those traditional technologies.
Now, are you saying are the Mode 2 technologies kind of better than Mode 1, or are we eventually going to be all Mode 2, or is Mode 1 still going to have a place for a while?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say Mode 2 technologies are better. They're certainly the newer ones, and as with a lot of new technology, they're the ones that seem to get all the attention and all the press. But I mean, looking forward many years, the Mode 2 technologies today will be the Mode 1s of tomorrow. So they're destined to have, their moment in the sun now, but they're also destined to reach that traditional age as well. And when you're considering these, Mode 2 technologies, what you should really be looking for is how well they integrate back into the technologies that exist in Mode 1. So, for example, with Red Hat, we have a number of technologies that you would consider in the Mode 1 space. Red Hat Enterprise Linux, our enterprise virtualization, our traditional systems management solutions, even our JBoss Java application server. Those are all where you would see them traditionally running Mode 1 applications. And then at the same time, we have a number of Mode 2 applications. We have our OpenShift platform as a service for developing, cloud-enabled applications. We have Feed Henry for developing web applications. But what's, and things like Red Hat storage to, take on, kind of the next generation storage technologies. But the interesting thing about, what we do at Red Hat is we build a lot of these Mode 2 technologies on top of the Mode 1 technologies, so that we're building on top of a stable base, but providing that agility and responsiveness that marks the new technologies and what they're really trying to do. So, those are, I think, a strong portfolio of how you can modernize Mode 1 applications to allow them to be taken advantage of by the Mode 2 applications, and also using the Mode 2 technologies that are available to deliver those web, mobile, agile applications that your customers and your business units are looking for.
Now, are there any particular technologies that companies should be looking for that help them integrate the two modes? Is there anything that kind of helps them bring the two modes together?
Yeah, certainly having common technology platforms makes it a lot easier if you're moving between, different server physical compute platforms. That can make things a lot more difficult. Standardizing, obviously, things like APIs and data interchange can be important to make it easier. And just wherever possible, having the two technologies interoperate, and that's something I think that Red Hat has done a paid a particular attention to is making sure, again, that our Mode 2 focused solutions leverage technology from Mode 1. So when you look at something like a private cloud that's based on OpenStack, Red Hat's OpenStack is built on top of our enterprise Linux operating system and our enterprise virtualization, and is able to leverage the Red Hat storage as a Mode 2 storage device. But again, it's all built on top of stable infrastructure. Likewise, when you look at management, we have a mixture of Mode 1 management and Mode 2 management solutions with our Red Hat Satellite and with CloudForms. And that's great because it allows you to basically do the traditional systems management with Satellite across all of the technology, and then be able to provision it very quickly, get it into the hands of your developers or the hands of your architects or your QA departments using something like the self-service capability and lifecycle management that's available in CloudForms. So, being able to take advantage of solutions that bridge across those two technologies and use common interfaces and common technology across the two, I think, is one of the key things that can really make it easier if you're looking, to integrate Mode 1 and Mode 2 to applications.
Excellent. All right, at this point, I think we're going to move on to another poll question. Our next question, audience, is what steps has your organization taken to educate your staff about Bimodal IT? There's several selections there: analyst days, work with consultants or systems integrators, webinars, industry events, or other. And I believe it will only allow you to select one, so if you've done more than one of these, you'll have to just pick one. And again, we'll give you a few minutes to make a selection and then hit the Submit Answer button. All right, we've got a few responses. We'll give you just a few more. Okay, let's go ahead and push this out. Okay, the number one choice here was other, so we probably should have a way for you to tell us what the other was, which would be interesting. And not a surprise here, webinars gets a lot of votes since you're on a webinar right now about Bimodal IT, which was selected by 41.9%. Then industry events was selected by 6.4%. 6.4% said they've worked with consultants or systems integrators, and no one said analyst days, so that's interesting. One of the reasons that we asked this question was that we got some similar results from that survey we've been talking about. We asked people, what are the inhibitors of Bimodal IT at your organization? And the number one answer from a majority of the participants, 52%, said a lack of knowledgeable staff. And so that seems to be one of the biggest problems, the biggest concerns is just people not really sure about how to do bimodal or what they should be doing. Other top concerns were security concerns, siloed IT architecture, migration difficulties, management issues, compliance concerns, interoperability concerns, that's something we've talked about a little bit, perceived cost, and lack of executive support. So now, Marty, I'm going to come back to you again. What should organizations be doing to help them overcome some of these hurdles, especially that lack of knowledgeable staff that we see is a big problem at some organizations?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, the analyst community has really picked up on bimodal, or as I said, IDC often calls it hybrid IT. But this concept of dual speeds for various different IT infrastructures and applications, and so it's to get the ground work in place. Certainly, you can look there with the analysts. Second thing that I think you can do is really leverage the vendors that you currently use as you speak with your current IT technology providers. You need to ask them about what they can do to help you better understand how you can make a transition to Mode 2 applications while leveraging your Mode 1 investments. I think it's a strong case that maybe if one of your technology providers isn't able to provide you a good solid answer in that maybe they are not the right technology to continue building your future platforms on. As I've already mentioned, Red Hat has a number of solutions that span across Mode 1 and Mode 2, and in particular, to address some of this lack of knowledgeable staff, Red Hat has a broad array of training courses that can actually help educate your staff both on Mode 1 application, management, maintenance, development, and Mode 2. So things like Red Hat Systems Administration or Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization or Red Hat Satellite Administration, those are all Mode 1 courses that can give you a strong foundation for how you would build those traditional applications. And then you can layer on top things like Red Hat OpenStack administration, Red Hat CloudForms administration, and a lot of the Mode 2 classes give you a strong basis on how those more cloud-enabled, mobile-enabled, agile applications should be developed.
Great. I think I'm going to actually move on to another poll question at this point. Audience, the next question for you is, what is the biggest obstacle to Mode 2 projects at your organization? We've got that staff skill set is an option again, lack of vendor capabilities, no need at this time, or other. And again, you can only select one, but then click the Submit Answer button in the middle of the slide there. And again, we'll give everyone a few minutes to submit their responses. Okay, just a few more seconds here. Go ahead and click that Submit Answer button if you haven't already. All right, we'll go ahead and push the results out. Again, this supports what we've seen before. 56.4% said it's the staff skill set. Then there was other for 20.5%. No need at this time was selected by 15.3%, and 7.6% said lack of vendor capabilities. So I don't think any big surprises there. But one of the reasons why we asked this question was going back to our survey again. What we found was that a lot of organizations say that they're going to need to be moving into Mode 2 within the near future. Now, I know the slide is a little bit confusing. It's got a lot of numbers and a lot of colors on there, but it's not so bad really once we get into it. We asked everyone who took the survey what the balance was between Mode 1, that was the traditional mode, and Mode 2, the agile mode at their organizations right now, and how they expect it to change over the next 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. And basically on this slide, everywhere that you see that it's more red or darker red, that means they're more in Mode 1, that traditional mode. And as it gets lighter and grayer, that means they're moving more into Mode 2. So you can see on that first line, that represents their current state. 19% of the people we talked to said that their organizations are currently all Mode 1. And then the biggest percentage, 40%, said that they're about 80-20 between Mode 1 and Mode 2. And then if you add in the next set, that's the ones that are 60-40 between Mode 1 and Mode 2. That gives you about 3/4 of the respondents said that they're mostly Mode 1 right now. But as you move down the chart, you can see that in 1 year, that red is starting to move over to the left. And in 3 years, the red's moving farther to the left until you get down to the 5-year spot. The biggest piece on the chart now is that 31% of organizations expect to be about 50-50 between Mode 1 and Mode 2, between the traditional and the more agile technologies. And then if you look between the 50-50 over to the right side, but over to the full Mode 2 over there, that's about 2/3 of organizations said that they expect to be half or more in Mode 2 within 5 years. So basically what this is telling us is that companies are going to be doing more of these Mode 2 projects within the next 1 to 5 years, and that it's going to be coming down the pipe for them. So Marty, my next question for you is, what's your advice for these organizations that know they're going to be doing some more Mode 2 things, but they haven't really done a lot yet, or maybe they haven't even done anything that's really Mode 2 yet? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I see. Obviously, the first thing is they need to start experimenting right away. They've got to get their feet wet. They've got to know, at least at a small scale, what they're getting into. You certainly don't want to have your first Mode 2 be a major mission critical application that the business is betting on to transform the company. You can start small and start with Mode 2 applications that provide maybe focused capabilities or functionality, again, built on top of or connected into the Mode 1 applications. And they should be doing that right now. They should be looking at selecting a short list of providers that will allow them to make the transition, of a core part of their applications from Mode 1 to Mode 2, and be able to, pace that at their own pace. For Red Hat, we have a product, Red Hat Cloud Infrastructure, and it is a unified kind of Mode 1, Mode 2 solution. It provides both traditional infrastructure, traditional virtualization, as well as the option for private cloud and self-service management with things like CloudForms. And it really is a solution that allows the customer to choose the pace that they need, or that they have to have to move forward. So those kinds of solutions that give them that kind of flexibility, I think, is most critical.
So you said they can start at a small scale. Kind of how is there a too small point, or kind of what's kind of the ideal size of a project, or what's a good first project that they should be experimenting with, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think obviously you want a project that engages a portion of your staff so that you're getting them the experience. You're going to want to invest in making sure that they're educated and know exactly what they're expected to implement, and from there, it really depends on what the business driver is. They can obviously leverage, since you're embarking on a new project here or in a new area. You can leverage the benefits of people who have gone before you. There are a number of companies, systems integrators, and consultants that can offer advice that have already been through this transition before, and they can come in and not just do the work for you. That's not really what you're looking for, but they can sit down with your team and participate with your team in terms of transferring them the skills and knowledge about how to do the development required to bring Mode 1 applications up to a standard level where they can support Mode 2 applications, and then also how you design, develop, and deploy and manage Mode 2 applications. And Red Hat Services offers basically a half-day workshop that allows them to go through this process with you. It starts with discovery. They go through kind of a high-level design, and they talk about deployment options to basically really help you define what you need to do to get your Mode 1 and Mode 2 environments up to the appropriate level.
Now I have a slide here, Marty, that talks a little bit about what Red Hat offers. I wonder if you want to walk us through that. I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for question and answers, because it looks like we're getting quite a few questions through. But do you want to walk us through this slide quickly that just talks a little bit about what Red Hat offers?
Yeah, for people who aren't familiar with Red Hat, we are the largest commercial open source solution provider. We provide solutions that span the gamut from operating systems through virtualization, middleware, storage, and into private cloud, including platform as a service. All of our solutions are built around open source innovation, open source technology, which gives us greater flexibility and faster delivery times for our solutions to market. Ultimately, we see that what we do with the open source software that we deliver to commercial enterprises benefits them as much as it benefits us. And we find that the open collaboration that we do, both in the community and with our customers, results in a win-win for both them and for us.
Great. Okay, now before we begin the Q&A portion, please fill out the feedback form that has opened on your computer. If your pop-up blockers have prevented the form from launching on your computer, you can click the red survey icon at the bottom of your screen. To complete the form, please press the Submit Answer button at the bottom of the page. Thank you in advance for filling out the feedback form. Your participation in this survey allows us to serve you better. All right, and at this point, we're going to go on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question in the text box located below the media player, then click the Submit Question button. And Marty, I'm looking at some of the questions that come in. And the first one I'm going to ask you to tackle, it says, how do you actually implement Bimodal IT? Is it just a concept that people need to understand, or is there actual reference architecture or case studies to follow? How do you really do it, especially for a traditional firm that is behind in technology?
Yeah, so there isn't always just a single blueprint for how to implement Bimodal. I think the first thing is it is a general concept that you need to have in mind. But once you have that general concept in mind, it really is then for you to go and try and determine which applications and which systems in your environment really need to remain in kind of the mode 1 environment, and which of them are suitable for moving to mode 2. The question mentioned someone who's behind in technology. That may mean and that may necessitate the first thing being modernizing your traditional mode 1 applications. I mentioned before it's very hard or nearly impossible to build agile, mobile-ready, cloud-enabled mode 2 applications on top of technology that has really become legacy. And I use legacy there in a negative term, in that it is holding you back. So maybe the first step for someone who's behind the technology curve is just modernizing those mode 1 applications. Things like moving off of traditional Unix systems onto more modern operating systems. When you look at the technology there, really Linux and Windows are now driving the data center, and so you need to move on to platforms that are going to have those kinds of future. Similarly, moving off of RISC-based architectures onto Intel-based x86 architectures where you have that common platform, and then also upgrading any kind of storage requirements and things like that to really modernize that mode 1 core. From there, really, then it's assessing, starting with what application the business can benefit the most by having it built in an agile, environment. So you talk to the business units, find out what's driving their business or what can make the biggest impact on their business, and begin that development process in mode 2 cloud-enabled, kind of application environment. That's really, I think, the way you go about implementing it. So no one-size-fits-all blueprint, no reference architecture, single reference architecture, really a concept and a process that you have to follow.
Excellent. I think that answered that very well. Another question. What are the most common problems that organizations encounter when they begin becoming bimodal?
Yeah, so obviously one of the big things we already talked about is just lack of education, lack of skilled resources. You might have a lot of traditional resources supporting those traditional systems, and that's great. And some of them may be interested in making the transition over and developing new Mode 2 applications. But if not, you might have to go and find new staff or retrain your existing staff. So again, I think that was borne out in the survey, both in the webinar and in the research report that was done. Beyond that, I think really it probably comes down to picking the right solutions. A lot of the Mode 2 solutions are new technologies that have just kind of burst onto the scene, and they maybe don't have the long track record of enterprise support, enterprise longevity. I mentioned before, these Mode 2 applications will become the Mode 1s of the future. So you want to make sure that you're on a platform that has, a proven track record of delivering enterprise life cycles, enterprise performance. So you need to pick those kinds of technologies as well. So I think those are probably two of the biggest hurdles or pitfalls that companies could face.
Good. Okay. Another question. What can you say about approaches to monitoring performance for bimodal IT? Should you have one solution for both modes or individual solutions, one for Mode 1 and one for Mode 2, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question about how much separation you would have between say monitoring and management of the two different modes. Certainly, when you look at them, typical Mode 1 applications and Mode 2 applications have very different operational models. Mode 1 applications are typically monolithic. They typically scale up. That is, that you add more computing resources, storage, memory, processing power, et cetera, to get additional performance out of the Mode 1 application. In addition, downtime is not allowed in most Mode 1 applications, so a lot of resources go into making sure that they're highly available and very, very closely monitored to make sure that any outage is as minimal as possible. Now, if you contrast that to the Mode 2 side, a lot of Mode 2 applications are actually designed to tolerate failure readily. And in a lot of cases, removing systems from the Mode 2 application is the way you go about, upgrading them to newer versions. So they scale horizontally, so it's not one system that's doing the work. It's tens or hundreds or thousands of systems that are providing the service. Any one system is not critical to the overall performance of the application. You can lose one or dozens of them and not suffer any negative consequences. Ultimately, they are designed to be kind of more resilient, and in a lot of cases, maybe even are running on infrastructure that is less robust, you might say. Certainly, running things, say, in the public cloud, there may or may not be a guarantee that those instances persist for long periods of time. So, if your monitoring solution can understand those two different modes of operation and be aware that failures in a Mode 2 application, in a particular node of a Mode 2 application, is not a critical event, whereas failure of even a single instance of a Mode 1 application is a critical event. If your monitoring solution can sort those things out and raise appropriate alerts, I think you could use the same solution. Otherwise, you might want to look for something that can either do that, or you might have to go down the route of multiple tools, although I think multiple tools is less than ideal.
Good. The next question, this is actually kind of more of a comment, I think, for you to respond to. One of the participants has said, in my opinion, the Mode 2 providers are skipping the CIO and catering to the CFO and CEO. Then the IT department responds reactively and cannot respond planned by working with their current IT vendors. Do you want to respond to that comment at all?
Yeah, yeah, I think that could be very, very true. You know, as I mentioned, a lot of the Mode 2 technology providers are younger, newer companies, and so they don't always have the established relationships, you know, with the CIO's office. And so, yeah, but they do have the attention and the interest of the developers. And so, you know, I think this is kind of a good rallying cry for the IT department to make sure that they're staying ahead of those providers and making sure that they are laying out options for their developers ahead of the providers coming in and, you know, kind of getting them hooked kind of surreptitiously. So the CIO needs to have a directive to basically say, hey, we need to make sure that we offer Mode 2 solutions that our developers can use and use readily and make them available so that they're there when the developers look to use them and they're not, you know, kind of going around the procurement process.
Excellent. I think that was good. Another question. I think this is good since we've talked about knowledgeable staff quite a bit today. One of the participants has asked, how do you staff for bimodal IT, and how do you support both types of modes from within your IT organization?
Yeah, I already mentioned. I think, you know, if you're currently a traditional IT department, you're going to have a lot of your staff, probably the vast majority of your staff, familiar with those Mode 1 applications, and they're going to know exactly what's needed to make sure that those Mode 1 applications continue to sustain your business, right, and run the core of your business. To staff Mode 2, you might have to look, you know, outside of your existing IT staff. You might have to look to either hiring or, you know, bringing in a different group to actually, you know, staff those Mode 2 solutions. That does not mean that, you know, the Mode 1 and Mode 2 guys shouldn't talk. On the contrary, again, the Mode 1 team is basically providing the foundational data, the foundational resources that the Mode 2 team is going to be developing against. So you need to make sure that there's a good relationship between those two. But they also have to understand that they're going to be moving at different rates. The Mode 1 team is again going to be probably doing it on slower release cycles, heavier focus on QA and testing up front to ensure that there's no downtime and there are no problems when changes are made in the environment. Whereas the Mode 2, they kind of follow a little bit more of what we think of as the Silicon Valley methodology of go fast, break things, but fix them very quickly. So as long as those two, staffs can communicate with each other, and you really have to kind of make sure that they're communicating with each other. I really think that maybe they have to have a little bit different organizational structure, and obviously different operational modes. The Mode 2 guys are going to be following more DevOps or Agile development methodologies, which are going to allow them to get that speed of deployment. So staffing probably resulting in multiple teams, but that are integrated and communicate on a regular basis.
Very good. So we have several questions that I'm going to kind of group together. There's a few questions in here about security. Kind of what are some of the big security concerns that organizations would run into when they're becoming bimodal, and kind of what steps should they be taking to secure a bimodal environment?
Yeah, security is obviously probably one of the top concerns. I think in the survey it was kind of right up there for one of the big reasons why bimodal had not been implemented or was a concern. And whenever we talk to IT decision makers, security is always a top concern. I think the most important thing to think about when you're doing bimodal application and security, you have to really think about how you do security, not just in a single comprehensive way like firewall, but you have to think about it in the sense of layers. Certainly, Mode 2 applications tend to be more available to outside resources. When we talk about web and we talk about mobile, those are inherently kind of accessible types of applications. That invariably leads to more risk associated with gaining access. So the first thing you need to do is figure out how you can mitigate the risk of compromise for the Mode 2 application in of itself. And there are a ton of educational resources about how you secure Mode 2 applications, how you securely authenticate individuals and ensure that they only have access to the particular resources they have. But that's not the end of it. The next step is making sure that the access between the Mode 2 applications and the core data that exists in your Mode 1 applications, that interaction is also secured. So that would be kind of another layer. And what I mean by that is you don't open up your entire Mode 1 application hey, here's everything, just come and get it. You make sure that what bits of information the Mode 2 application needs access to, and you only allow those bits to come out of the Mode 1 application. So you minimize the ability for there to be broad data compromise. And then the last thing is you just make very, very sure that that you have adequate intrusion detection monitoring, so that should anything any anomaly show up, you're alerted to it right off the bat, and you can take appropriate steps to close off access. We all know about the major hacks that have happened at banks and retailers, and those were really, they weren't discovered despite the fact that there were massive amounts of data stolen. And it's somewhat a failing of the fact that they weren't looking for kind of abnormal access patterns to their data systems of record. And if they had, they wouldn't have necessarily prevented the breach, but they could have mitigated the damage done. And we wouldn't be talking about 40 million credit card stolen. We maybe would have been talking about hundreds, or maybe just a couple thousand, as opposed to 40,000. So layers between the end users and the Mode 2 application, layers between the Mode 2 application and the Mode 1 application, restricted visibility and data access between the Mode 2 and Mode 1, and then finally monitoring to ensure that abnormal access patterns are flagged and alerted immediately.
Excellent. We've had another management question come in. This question asks, isn't how you manage Mode 1 and Mode 2 environments fundamentally different? Whereas Mode 1 utilizes traditional delivery of defining data center resources, Mode 2 is going to be more software-defined and API-driven orchestration. Do you want to address that, Marty?
Yes, absolutely. And they're exactly right. I mean, the way you manage Mode 1 and Mode 2 environments are very, very different. I mentioned before, Mode 1 environments are typically scale up, highly available, and you spend a lot of time defining the specific resources that the Mode 1 application is going to consume, and those resources are in some ways pre-allocated or reserved to that Mode 1 application. And there's not a lot of dynamic exchange of resources between Mode 1 applications. Mode 2, part of that agility that we talk about isn't just in delivering the applications quickly. It's also in the application's ability to respond very quickly to changes in demand. So resources in the Mode 2 side of things are more elastic. They are, in a lot of cases, software defined or software orchestrated. By that I mean that they're automatically provisioned and added into the resource pool, as needed. And we see that, it was just, Black Friday and now Cyber Monday. I guess some retailers had some challenges, but others didn't. And in a lot of cases, that's because they've designed their online resources to scale with increasing demand, so that when a Black Friday comes around, when a Cyber Monday comes around, their web presence and their online stores are able to add resources and scale dynamically to meet that demand. I think that's a classic example of kind of what a Mode 2 application is. Absolutely, the management between the two are very different, and I think Red Hat acknowledges that. We have different management systems. I mentioned before, Red Hat Satellite is more traditionally used in a Mode 1 environment, and Red Hat CloudForms is used more traditionally in a Mode 2 environment. But the two of them cooperate to make sure that you can manage across both in a common way. So, very valid comment.
Okay, great, Marty. I think we're coming right down to the end of the hour now. So, Marty, I'm just going to ask you if you have any closing thoughts, anything last that you'd like to add.
Yeah, no, only thing I would say is it sounds like the group on the phone, I'm glad that they're using this webinar to educate themselves on bimodal IT, and I just encourage them to spend the time looking at the analyst resources, look at the resources available on Red Hat's website, check out our product and service offerings, and to let us know, obviously reach out to Red Hat if we can help them in their transition to become a bimodal IT organization.
Great. And here we're actually going to push out a few resources. We've got a few links that could help you with that education process. For more information related to today's webinar, you can visit any of the resource links open before you. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand in case you want to listen to it again. And now we're just going to close up. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Embracing Bimodal IT, Steps You Should Be Taking Today, brought to you by Information Week and Red Hat. This webinar is copyright 2015 by United Business Media Limited. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by Information Week and Red Hat, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guest, Marty Wesley, I'm Cynthia Harvey. Thanks for your time and have a great day.